Make use of the promo code LVDBF during Black Friday to get a 15% discount on Magic singles at flipsidegaming.com while supporting the channel at the same time. Hello and welcome to another modern gameplay video. Today we're taking a look at TitanShift, a red-green ramp-based combo deck that's looking to win the game with a bunch of Valakut triggers. So Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle, is a land that enters the battlefield tapped, and whenever a mountain enters a battlefield under our control, if we control at least 5 other mountains, we can have Valakut deal 3 damage to any target. So this is how we're going to try and close out the game, by ramping into a ton of lands including Valakuts, and then having a bunch of mountains enter the battlefield to deal damage to our opponent. And one way we have to win the game on the spot if we have enough lands in play is with Scapeshift, a 4-mana sorcery that says sacrifice any number of lands and then search your library for up to that many land cards and put them on the battlefield tapped. So if we have 7 lands in play and cast a Scapeshift, we can sacrifice all those lands and then search up 1 copy of Valakut, the Molten Pinnacle, alongside 6 mountains, and those mountains could be basic mountains, but they could also be cards like Cinderglade or Stomping Ground that have the mountain subtype. And if we have 6 mountains entering the battlefield with a Valakut, we get to deal 18 damage, since we have 6 mountains that all see 5 other mountains entering the battlefield at the same time, which means we get 6 Valakut triggers, which 6 times 3 is 18 damage. So most of the time that's enough to kill the opponent with all the fetch and shock lands that are in Modern, but sometimes you'll need 1 extra land or 1 extra lightning bolt to finish off an opponent. And once you get to search up 8 lands, you could, for example, get 2 Valakuts and 6 mountains, which is a total of 36 damage, so you could easily deal more than 20 damage if you have to. And the other main win condition alongside Scapeshift is Primeval Titan, which is a 6-mana 6/6 with Trample, and when Primeval Titan enters the battlefield or attacks, we can search our library for up to 2 land cards and put them on the battlefield tapped, so we can just search up a few copies of Valakut and afterwards search up some mountains and make sure to kill our opponent that way as well. So let's take a look at our entire deck list. We've got 3 copies of Lightning Bolt at 1 mana as cheap interaction to deal with opposing creatures. We've got 2 copies of Relic of Progenitus to deal with graveyard decks, and it also just cycles, so it's not a big opportunity cost to play it. Then we've got our first ramp spell, Search for Tomorrow, which has Suspend for just a single green mana, so we can pay green mana and then put Search for Tomorrow in exile with 2 time counters on it, and then at the beginning of our upkeep, we can remove a time counter from Search for Tomorrow, and when the last time counter is removed, we get to cast Search for Tomorrow for free, and then search our library for a basic land card and put it on the battlefield untapped, and then shuffle our library. So ideally we suspend Search for Tomorrow on turn 1, but we could always cast it for 3 mana as well. And then at 2 mana we've got 4 copies of Sakura Tribe Elder, which is a 1/1 creature that we can sacrifice at any point to search our library for a basic land card to put on the battlefield tapped. So this helps us ramp by searching up a mountain or a forest. We also have 4 copies of Farseek, which lets us search our library for a plains, island, swamp, or mountain and put it on the battlefield tapped, so we can just search up one of the many dual lands in the deck like Stomping Ground and Cinderglade, which of course count as mountains, but we can also produce green mana with them. We also have 2 Explorers, which let us draw a card and let us play an additional land this turn. And then we have 1 copy of Prismatic Omen, which is an enchantment that says lands you control are every basic land type in addition to their other types, which essentially turns all our lands into mountains, which is very relevant with fetch lands, for example, since let's say we have a Valakut in play with enough lands in play, then we can play Fetch Land, which enters the battlefield as a mountain, which will trigger Valakut, and then we can still fetch up another land as well, which will also count as a mountain for Valakut. And it also makes Valakut itself count as a mountain, so you need fewer mountains in play before Valakut starts triggering, and of course also turns your forest into a mountain, which is useful. So Prismatic Omen also kind of ramps us in a weird way, since you need 1 fewer land in play before Valakut becomes active. And then we also have 2 copies of Anger of the Gods as more creature interaction, dealing 3 damage to each creature and exiling them as well, so great against the Dredge deck. We also have a Wood Elves, which is a 3-mana 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, we can search our library for a forest card and put it on the battlefield untapped, so another ramp card. Then we've got our 4 copies of Scapeshift, 4 copies of Primeval Titan, and then we also have 2 copies of Summoner's Pact, which can search up a green creature in our deck, so it's often going to search up an additional copy of Primeval Titan, but there are corner cases where you might want to search up another green creature like a Sakura Tribe Elder or Wood Elves, or after sideboard there's some other green creatures in the sideboard as well. And then of course on the following upkeep, you have to pay 4 mana, otherwise you lose the game. Then taking a look at our mana base, we've got a total of 27 lands, since we do want to make sure to hit our land drops every turn, and we've got a total of 14 mountains, which is important with Scapeshift when searching up mountains and Valakuts to be able to win the game. You want to make sure you have enough mountains left in your deck to trigger the Valakut in the first place. So we've got 6 basic mountains, 1 shelter thicket, which we can cycle, counts as both a mountain and a forest, but enters the battlefield tapped. 3 Cinderglades, another mountain forest, enters untapped if we control at least 2 basic lands, and then 4 Stomping Grounds, which we can pay 2 life to have them enter the battlefield untapped. Then we've got 4 Valakuts, which of course are not legendary lands, so we can have multiple copies in play to deal even more damage. We've got 2 basic forests as kind of a necessary evil, since usually you want to make sure to have enough mountains in play so that if you naturally draw Valakuts, you start dealing damage sooner, so having a forest in play can be a bad thing, but of course it helps you play around Blood Moon, and sometimes you do just need the basic forest to fetch up. And then we've got 7 fetch lands, 4 wooded foothills, and 3 windswept heaths. And you do also have to be a little bit careful when fetching lands to make sure you have enough mountains in play, but that you don't fetch up too many mountains that you're no longer able to win the game with Scapeshift. But of course, with Scapeshift, you're not always forced to sacrifice all your lands. You could also just sacrifice a few of them if that's enough to win the game. Then going over the sideboard, we've got a Nature's Claim to deal with artifacts and enchantments, an additional Relic of Progenitus and Gravedigger's Cage against graveyard decks. A Braid can deal with artifacts and creatures, Ancient Grudge to deal with artifacts, 3 copies of Damping Sphere against the Storm and Tron decks, 2 Tireless Trackers for the grindy games like the midrange decks. We've got a Reclamation Sage as another creature that can deal with artifacts and enchantments, and we can also search it up with a Summoner's Pact, an additional Anger of the Gods against creature decks and dredge decks, for example. We've got 2 Obstinate Baloths to gain a bit of life against the aggressive decks, and a Thragtusk as well to gain a bit of life, and also comes in the more grindy mid-range and control matchups. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the draw, and this is a weird hand with just the 1 land. But we do have Search, which we can suspend on turn 1, and any second land lets us cast the Farseeks and Tribe Elder. And we are on the draw. I think we can actually try and keep this one. But if we don't find our second land soon, we could get punished. Alright, there's a Valakut. I think I still like suspending Search on turn 1 here. And say go. So we might be up against a Jund deck. Another Search is not bad. So we are hitting our land drops for now, and ramping up towards our Titan, which is our big payoff card. So if they have a Thoughtseize or Titan, we could be in a bit of trouble, but we still have the Scapeshift as well as a win condition. So this hand should be pretty resilient. I guess what we wouldn't like to see is a Liliana of the Veil, making us discard, but doesn't seem to be the case. So yeah, for opponents just holding a bunch of removal spells, this hand could easily run away with the game. They've got a Kolaghan's Command to make us discard. I guess we'll discard a Farseek. So we get to cast the first Search. And I guess we'll get a Mountain for now. Alright, we drew a land, so we could cast both ramp spells here, but we might also want to protect our hand from discard, so let's say we play the land, play both ramp cards, next turn we'll have 7 mana. Opponent's still at 19, so Scapeshift for 7 lands would not necessarily be lethal, but probably still pretty good since we can just get a bunch of Valakuts, so future mountains are lethal. So if they do have another discard effect, I think we'll be okay. If they go Thoughtseize plus another Kolaghan's Command or Liliana, then we could lose both win conditions. But it's probably still worth it to go for it here. So let's grab a Cinderglade, and then play Tribe Elder and Farseek, which can get a tapped Stomping Ground here. Alright, so next turn we can cast either a Primeval Titan or a lethal Scapeshift if our opponent loses 1 more life here. Alright, opponent is fetching. So if this is a Bloodbraid Elf, I think we'll be in good shape. And yep, there's Elf. Gets Inquisition, which is going to miss, and see a hand that's going to kill them. So yeah, the Jund matchup is usually pretty decent. So we'll see how things change after sideboard. So this is a matchup where we want the Tireless Trackers for sure, and Obstinate Baloth is pretty decent against Liliana of the Veil. Could also consider an extra Relic of Progenitus to shrink down Tarmogoyfs, which is the fastest clock they have. And then what don't we like? I don't think Lightning Bolt and Anger are necessary, so those could easily go. So we might just replace our cards like this. Could also see Thragtusk coming in, just as another sticky threat. Although I'm not sure what I would cut for it. Maybe the Relic can go and we just bring in Thragtusk as an additional threat. Yeah, something like this might be okay. Alright, so we're on the draw, and we've got a hand that's okay. We've got a bit of ramp and a relic that can shrink down Goyf, but of course we don't have the payoff card yet. But we did also bring in a few extra trackers, the Baloths and the Thragtusk, so our deck is a bit more threat dense than it was before sideboard. So I don't mind keeping a hand like this. So the Inquisition might take Relic if they have a Tarmogoyf in hand, might go after the Search for Tomorrow, which is the turn 1 ramp spell here. And they do take the Relic, so we might have a turn 2 Tarmogoyf incoming. Alright, let's suspend Search. So if there's a turn 2 Tarmogoyf, we want to try and preserve our life total as much as possible to buy ourselves more time. Alright, instead another Blackleaf Cliffs. Opponent did also mulligan, so they might not have the green mana for the Goyf. So I think I like playing a Sakura Tribe Elder here, so that if our opponent does have a Liliana of the Veil, we can pressure Liliana with the Tribe Elder in the meantime. And our opponent scoops it up, so they might not have drawn the land they were looking for. So yeah, once it gets to the late game, the Scapeshift deck is usually favored, since, of course, just top decking a Primeval Titan or Scapeshift is often gonna win us the game on the spot. So the Jund deck really does need to get off to a good start with early discard, Tarmogoyf, Liliana to pressure our hand, otherwise they will have a bad time. So on to the next one. Alright, we're on the play. We've got a 1-lander, which is not ideal. Do have a Relic of Progenitus, which we can sacrifice on turn 2 potentially. I think I'm gonna keep. So let's just fetch a Stomping Ground for now, so we can play a Relic and see what we're up against. Alright, looks like a black-green mid-range deck maybe, and no turn 1 play. Alright, let's hope to draw a land. Alright, drew a land, perfect. So, don't think we want to explore given that we don't have another land in hand, so I'm just gonna Tribe Elder here and pass a turn. Alright, our opponent with an Eldrazi Temple, so black-green Eldrazi, who knows? Overgrown Battlements, our opponent's definitely interested in ramping. Alright, so let's just sacrifice the Elder. And I think we still get a mountain here. We could get a forest in case we draw mountains, so we can still cast 2 ramp spells here. But given the Primeval Titan in hand, I think I'm leaning towards mountain. Alright, drew another Primeval Titan. So here we could just Wood Elves, get a Cinderglade, and then we can still sacrifice a Relic of Progenitus, and we might as well do it now on off chance that we draw land, so we can still play land for the turn. So yeah, let's do that. Alright, we drew the land. So if we draw land, we can play Primeval Titan next turn. And that can probably just search up 2 Valakuts. And then when the Primeval Titan attacks, we can get 2 mountains. And our opponent with a Courser of Krufix, and top of their deck is a Desecration Demon. Brings me back to Ravnica Theros Standard. Alright, we did not draw the land, so we can't cast Primeval Titan this turn, sadly. But we can do so next turn. So, what's the play here? Can attack with the Wood Elves, Anger of the Gods to kill the Courser. Do we really care about the Courser though? Not really, so we might be better off just casting the Explorer and then playing Sakura Tribe Elder. Find a Summoner's Pact, which we don't really want to cast since we need all our mana next turn to cast Primeval Titan. So let's just play Sakura Tribe Elder, say go. And then sacrifice to get another mountain. Alright, so we know our opponent has Desecration Demon in hand, which we do have a Wood Elves to sacrifice here, so that's good. Opponent did gain a bit of life, so it might take a few extra Valakut triggers to kill them, but with Primeval Titan we don't care as much if they gain a bit of life. Let's get a land. And play Primeval Titan. Turn 5, not the fastest Primeval Titan ever, but still good enough in this slower matchup. So let's search up 2 Valakuts. And then we even drew a mountain for the turn, which we can play to trigger them. And we could just kill the Courser, or we can start going face. Going face is probably fine. Alright, so next turn we can play another Titan as well as attack with the first one if he's still alive. So don't mind our spot here. And even if our opponent does have something like a Thought-Knot Seer here to take the Titan, we can summon Respect for another one. It's going to be another Overgrown Battlement, so now the first one makes quite a bit of mana. And there's the Desecration Demon, so 6/6 flying. Not gonna tap it down quite yet, since we can even just shoot it down with 2 Valakut triggers. Alright, let's untap. And the Wooded Foothills, so we'll play the Wooded Foothills, play another Titan. And we'll go get 2 more Valakuts, I guess. And now the Wooded Foothills can fetch up a mountain. Let's go get a Cinderglade, I guess. And that's 4 Valakut triggers, so 12 damage. Can just go face here. And then attack with Primeval Titan. No need to tap down Desecration Demon. Attack, and that's 2 more mountains, so that's 24 additional damage here. And can just all go face. And that should wrap things up. Alright, so on to sideboarding against what looks like a weird mid-range Eldrazi deck. Not entirely sure what to expect. What kind of fate can our opponent bring in? They might have some land destruction in the form of Fulminator Mages. Don't have to worry about Blood Moon. So maybe we want Tireless Trackers, our opponent might have a bit of discard. But we haven't seen any in the first game. I guess Anger of the Gods is not going to be great, neither is Lightning Bolt. So those can easily go. And replace them with Trackers. Obstinate Baloth might be okay. Just as an additional threat to hold down the fort on the ground. And I might just bring in 1 Speculative Reclamation Sage just in case. Could also maybe bring in another Relic of Progenitus just to cycle, since all the 3 damage burn spells seem pretty bad in this matchup. Could also bring in Thragtusk as an additional threat, but I think I'll just bring in the 3rd Relic to cycle it, and to get to our good cards more consistently, like Scapeshift and Titan, which should win the game by themselves. And if we do see a weird artifact that we need to deal with, we'll bring in Reclamation Sage for game 3. Alright, let's try this. I guess Reclamation Sage can also destroy Courser of Kruphix, which is an enchantment, so it does have a little bit of utility there as well. Alright, so what about this hand? It's got our 2 payoff cards, 5 lands but no ramp. Given that our opponent is not a particularly fast deck, this might be a keepable hand. But it's definitely not a great hand, since without any ramp, we're not going to be particularly explosive. But from what I could see from the opponent's deck, I think this might be a keep. And if they have something like an Inquisition of Kozilek, they would even miss. But doesn't look to be the case. Alright, so we might end up cycling the Shelter Thicket, so let's just play tapped Valakut for now. Opponent could also be playing Land Destruction alongside Surgical Extraction to deal with the Valakut. But we didn't see any Field of Ruins or Ghost Corridors in the first game. And it's going to be Overgrown Battlements. It's your opponent with their own ramp game here. And they might be faster at doing whatever they're trying to do than we are in this game. Alright, so probably just want to cycle the Shelter Thicket here. And I guess we can just play Mountain for now. Don't have to fetch a forest quite yet. Yeah, it's okay. Play Mountain, say go. Cycle Shelter Thicket end of turn. And then next turn we can always play an untapped Stomping Ground or fetch a green source if we draw into a ramp spell. Alright, opponent's got nothing. Let's cycle this. Alright, Search for Tomorrow is good. So we can just cast it here. So could even consider getting a forest, but we do have Primeval Titan in hand. So I don't think our life total is in too much danger, so we might as well just fetch a Stomping Ground. And by fetching the Stomping Ground, we make it less likely that we draw one right now. And I would prefer to draw ramp over Stomping Ground. Could have also just played Stomping Ground from hand, alternatively. So let's just cast Search. And get a mountain. Alright, opponent's got a Colony Heart Expedition, also a card that sometimes is played in the TitanShift decks. So they will be able to ramp into something here. There's the Eldrazi Temple again, but we don't see any Eldrazi yet. Alright, more lands. So we could play a second Valakut here. How does the math work out? Let's say we play Valakut, next turn Stomping Ground into Titan, get 2 mountains. Then we would be triggering both Valakuts, so that might be okay. Yeah, let's just play a tapped Valakut for now, say go. And yeah, we're not under any pressure. So as long as our opponent doesn't do anything too scary here, we'll be okay. Something like a Thought-Knot Seer now would be pretty annoying since they can take the Primeval Titan, and we still need quite a few land drops before Scapeshift becomes lethal. Although our opponent is at 18, so we technically only need 7 lands. And a Harrow to search up additional lands, which also triggers the Colony Heart Expedition. So we might see something pretty big next turn. Opponent can now sacrifice the expedition, get additional lands. So what's the big finish? Are they just gonna hardcast one of the big Eldrazi Titans like an Ulamog? Or is it something else? It's gonna be Acidic Slime to destroy one of our lands. Yeah, it's gonna set us back a turn. So that's too bad. Hopefully we can draw some ramp to speed things up. Alright, Relic can cycle. We'll just cycle it right now. I guess land destruction like Acidic Slime might be a reason to play more green sources so we can still cast our Primeval Titan. Alright, let's just play Stomping Grounds and then cast a Search. And I think we still get a mountain, but it might be okay to get a forest too. Not entirely sure. And our opponent's got another Harrow to get more lands. Alright, so if they don't mess with our lands, next turn we can cast a Titan. Could play Valakut before playing the Titan, or we could play Titan and then still play a fetch land to get a mountain to trigger the Valakuts in play. And our opponent has their own Primeval Titan. Alright, fair enough. Let's see what sweet lands our opponent gets. Although I guess next turn we could just play a land and kill them with a Scapeshift too, since they are at 18. So that might just be better than playing a Primeval Titan. Slime gets in for 2. And a Tireless Tracker would be pretty good too. Yeah, I don't think there's much that punishes us here for just going for the Scapeshift. So let's just play a fetch land, cast Scapeshifts. And we could even like float a bunch of mana beforehand, but it doesn't really matter here. Play Scapeshifts. Like we could have even sacked our Wooded Foothills, play Tireless Tracker before playing Scapeshift, so when the 7 lands enter the battlefield we get 7 clue tokens from the Tireless Tracker. If we wanted to play it maybe a bit better, but I think they're pretty dead here, so no real need to. Alright, so I want to make sure to get the right lands here, so 1 Valakut left in our deck, and then we just want to get 6 mountains. And that's 6 Valakut triggers, 18 damage. And that should kill them here, unless our opponent has instant speed land destruction. I guess they'd still have the untapped Overgrown Battlements, so they could have something like a Beast Within killing one of our lands, which would result in us only dealing 3 damage as long as they kill one of our mountains and not a Valakut. Since of course the triggers from Valakut already on the stack, so killing Valakut at instant speed here doesn't accomplish anything. So because a Valakut trigger also checks on resolution to make sure that there's still enough mountains in play to be able to deal the 3 damage, if the opponent were to kill one of our mountains, the 1 mountain that gets destroyed, on resolution the trigger sees 5 other mountains which are still there, so that 1 trigger would still deal 3 damage, but the Valakut triggers from all the other mountains upon resolution would not see the 5 other required mountains in play, so they would not end up dealing any damage, so the end result is only 3 damage instead of 18. Alright, sweet, on to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw, and what about this hand? It's not great, we are missing the payoff card like Scapeshift or Titan, but we do have a bit of interaction with Anger and quite a bit of ramp with the green cards here, so I think we'll still keep and just hope to draw into one of our payoff cards at some point. Opponent cycles a Street Wraith and Stomping Ground, so it could be Hollow One and Swift Spear instead, so it could be maybe a Death Shadow aggro deck. In which case, the Wood Elves being a chump blocker is going to be useful. Anger of the Gods could maybe kill some creatures too. So we've got some tools to work with here. Just play the Windswept Heath for now. and grab a tapped Stomping Ground or Cinderglade or Shelter Thicket. And a Young Pyromancer, alright, so not entirely sure what their deck is, but Anger of the Gods is looking pretty good. Mutagenic Growth on the Swiss Spear to pump it and make a token with Young Pyromancer. So yeah, the inclusion of the Phyrexian mana spells and the Street Wraith indicates Death Shadow, but we don't see any black mana yet, so who knows. Don't think we want to draw a Sheltered Thicket, so we'll just grab it here. Alright, might as well play Explore here, on the off chance that we drew into a relevant 1-drop. We did not. Since next turn we're probably just going to cast Anger of the Gods, which is going to be pretty decent. But for now we're taking quite a bit of damage. Let's grab a Stomping Ground. I guess we should also be a little bit aware of Blood Moon potentially. But yeah, let's just Anger. And then play Valakut. And hopefully that bought us enough time here. Opponent cycles another Street Wraith. Bloodstainmire, so that could potentially get black mana for a Death Shadow, which would be pretty large here. And instead it's going to be a Thoughtseize. Not the most effective Thoughtseize since our hand is pretty blank. Takes away the Wood Elves. And a second Young Pyromancer. Opponent has 1 card left in hand. Alright, so, I mean, at some point Valakut is just going to start dealing 3 damage, which can also take out the Young Pyromancer. So for now, we'll Farseek. Get another Stomping Ground out of the deck, since we would rather draw the Cinderglades, which come into play untapped once we play one of our second basics here. So our next mountain is going to deal 3 damage with Valakut. And there's the Death Shadow, 8/8. So if we draw a ramp card, we can kill our opponent, since we can just do 6 damage to their face. And a Lightning Bolt will work just as well. So play Mountain, 3 to the face. And then Lightning Bolt, 3 to the face. They temporarily get a very large Death Shadow before dying. Alright. That was a timely Anger of the Gods, which we probably want an additional copy of. Death Shadow is definitely an issue. We don't have any Engineered Explosives in the sideboard, which would typically be pretty good against it. Relic of Progenitus could have its uses, but might also be playing some Delve creatures, in which case emptying their graveyard could be useful. Obstinate Baloth and Thragtusk to gain a bit of life could be good. Tireless Tracker to just provide a bit of card advantage if the game slows down could be interesting too. Opponent might have Blood Moons, in which case we might want the Reclamation Sage and Nature's Claim as well. But we can't be bringing in too many cards either, so we do have to make some cuts. Lightning Bolt, not very good against Death Shadow, but it's good against the other creatures they present, so it's still good enough. Probably want another Anger. Don't think we have room for another Relic, but we'll maybe readjust if they show us some Delve creatures. Blood Moon could be possible, but they're also playing lots of dual lands, and casting Death Shadow underneath a Blood Moon might be tricky, so who knows, maybe they don't have Blood Moon, and we can do without the disenchant effects. Maybe we don't need all the scape shifts, since getting to 7 lands might be difficult, and instead we just want to rely more on the mid-range creatures to buy us some time and then just win with Primeval Titan beatdown. Could also be the case, and I could see cutting Explore as one of our weaker ramp cards. And maybe we don't need both trackers, we'll just bring in one. Yeah, not entirely sure about this matchup, but something like this might be okay. Bit of life gain with the Baloth and the Thragtusk could come in handy as well. Alright, what about this hand on the draw? Don't have any interaction, don't have any payoff cards. We do have Valakut and 2 Search for Tomorrows, which by themselves are decent, but maybe it's not good enough. Opponent is of course a Thoughtseize deck, so if we have a good hand with 1 payoff card, they could just take it away. So I'm guessing we'll try this one out, but we'll have to rely on the top of our deck, which may or may not work out. Opponent does have a turn 1 Blood Crypt into a Faithless Looting, discards Mutagenic Growth and Claim to Fame, and their Scape Shift right on time. Alright, let's fetch a Stomping Ground and suspend Search. Since if our opponent does have a Thoughtseize for Scapeshift, we want to make sure to have enough mountains in play where Valakut starts dealing damage as soon as possible. Even though fetching Basic Forest would not make us take 2 damage, and would give us a bit of insurance against a potential Blood Moon. So our opponent with lots of lootings, and there's a Thoughtseize, so sadly they do get to take the Scapeshift, which we just drew. So that's why sometimes just living off the top of your deck can be okay. They might also just take the Surge to slow us down, but they do take the payoff card. Alright, so here we get to play Valakut and suspend another Surge. And then even if they do Blood Moon us, we can just get Basic Forests with the Search for tomorrow. I guess now we can also just cast a Farseek, but I think getting the Valakut in play might be okay. So our opponent has disrupted us, but they haven't presented a threat yet. And they're just gonna pass a turn. Alright. They might be holding another Thoughtseize, but they wanna keep it in hand until the turn before we could cast Primeval Titan, which is a good thing to do. Let's cast Search. Still gonna get a mountain here. And there's Summoner's Pact, which can get Primeval Titan. Alright. Let's Farseek. Get a Stomping Ground, since I wouldn't mind drawing a Shelter Thicket over Stomping Ground. Play a fetch land, say go, and then next turn we could be casting Primeval Titan. And if they do Thoughtseize us, we also have the line of Summoner's Pact for Obstinate Baloth, putting the Baloth into play, which could be sweet. Alright, opponent's got nothing. Works for me. So let's fetch another Stomping Ground. I guess they could have an Assassin's Trophy here to blow up one of our lands at instant speed, but Primeval Titan doesn't really care too much. So let's grab a mountain. And then we'll Summoner's Pact for Prime Time and cast it. So we would lose to a Blood Moon, since of course then we can't pay for the Summoner's Pact, but I highly doubt our opponent's playing Blood Moon at this point. So I'm just gonna get to Valakut, and then I'll play a fetch land, since I don't really wanna put my opponent to a low life total right away before we can actually kill them, because their opponent might be holding Death Shadows, but they're unable to get them in play because they can't get their life total below 13, and our opponent scoops it up. Alright, so next turn, even without a Primeval Titan, we would have been able to kill our opponent just by getting 2 mountains into play, one with a fetch land, one from our hand, which would have been 18 damage total. So that's going to do it for today's gameplay. I want to thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day. I also want to thank all my patrons for being part of the channel, and you can become a patron yourself today and decide the topic of future videos over at patreon.com/LegenVD.